Hope floats after Supreme Court sends a plea to decriminalize homosexuality to the Constitution bench, stating that the concept of consensual sex requires more clarity. The top court observes that societal morality changes with time and law has to walk with life.
The government goes on the back foot after police crackdown against a journalist who brought the Aadhaar flaws out in the open backfires. Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad says the centre is committed to freedom of the press and will ensure security and sanctity of Aadhaar.
It's a big setback for the Modi government's efforts to privatize Air India. A parliamentary panel is likely to recommend against the sale of the national carrier. Wants the centre to wait for at least 5 more years for the Maharaja's revival.
Some breather in store for telecom operators. Sources tell your channel the Telecom Commission is likely to take up a proposal to spread spectrum payments over 16 years instead of the current 10-year window. May also relax spectrum caps, paving the way for more consolidation in the debt-ridden sector.
Deepak Parekh downplays slowdown fears in an exclusive chat with your channel right here. HDFC stock boss says the worst may be behind us and the economy is set to grow by at least 7% in the March quarter.
The market is on song. Benchmark indices hit new highs as investors go on a buying spree in the run-up to the budget. The Sensex adds almost 200 points to close above 34,350, while the Nifty crosses above 10,600 for the first time ever. Market experts say optimism over strong corporate earnings is driving the rally.
The taxman comes calling at BCCI. IT sleuths conduct a 15-hour survey at the Mumbai headquarters of the Indian Cricket Board over TDS dues. Also summons top BCCI officials, including Chief Executive Rahul Johri. Sources say the IT department has demanded an immediate payment of 19 crore rupees that are due.
Oprah Winfrey stirs presidential run hopes with a politically charged-up speech at the Golden Globe Awards. Much celebrated anchor and media entrepreneur slams gender inequality and racism, even as other actresses back Winfrey and seek pay parity with their male peers. Good evening, it's 9 p.m. This is the India Development Debate. You're with ET now. Let's take it straight to the big story we're tracking tonight. Is the government having second thoughts on privatizing Air India? Ever since the Union Cabinet cleared the proposal on the 28th of June, there's been a lot of back and forth. And last heard of this big ticket reform was in December when Aviation Minister Ashok Gajapati Raju told Parliament that the government doesn't want anyone who's working for Air India to lose his or her job. And now a leaked report of a parliamentary panel has given enough indications that the plan is unlikely to take off anytime soon. According to a section of the press, the House panel, headed by Trinamool Congress MP Derek O'Brien, is likely to suggest that the centre wait for at least 5 years and make Air India into a profitable company before the airline is finally sold off to a private party.
Agreed. Privatizing Air India was never going to be an easy task whatsoever, considering the high political patronage that the Maharaja is enjoying. Remember, the main opposition, that's the Congress, came out in the open against the move, while many within the ruling NDA believe that the airline should be protected as a national asset, quote-unquote. Although the House panel report is not binding on the national government, it could come as a big disruption and delay the whole procedure. On our India Development Debate this evening, we raise some very crucial questions. Is there any business for the government to be in the aviation business whatsoever? Why should the taxpayers' money be wasted on keeping the Maharaja afloat? Is it the possible backlash from the strong Air India unions that is forcing a rethink within the government? We have, of course, none other than Minister of State for Civil Aviation, Jayant Sinha, joining us on the phone line all the way from his constituency in Hazaribagh to take things forward. And following that, we'll be joined by a stellar panel to take stock of where things are as far as the Air India sale is concerned, and is the government getting second thoughts at all? Thank you very, very much, Mr. Sinha, for being with us. I know the Parliament report against Air India privatization has not been tabled. It's not an official recommendation just yet, but what do you make of the initial draft that's out in the public domain? And reports do suggest right now that they are against the sale of Air India.
There is talk of a report coming from the Standing Committee of Transport. That Standing Committee is a Rajya Sabha committee, and it is chaired by Shri Derek O'Brien from the TMC. Now, from what we understand, there is a preliminary report that is under discussion right now, but it has not yet been discussed or passed by the entire committee yet. And we are given to understand that a meeting has been scheduled on January 15th when this report will be discussed and the views of all of the members will be considered. So let us wait for this process to be concluded. I think, there are some reports in the media about it right now, but I don't think that that is the final formal report of the committee yet.
Right. Mr. Sinha, just to clear the air, does the government believe there is any case to reconsider the sale of Air India or put it off by 5 years, as this report seems to suggest?
Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs, on the advisement and recommendation of the Niti Aayog, has in principle given the approval for the strategic disinvestment of Air India. That process has been underway now for several months. There have been multiple meetings of the alternative mechanism that has been set up to consider the strategic disinvestment, and the process is moving forward as well as could be expected. So we are very much in the middle of that process. We have appointed a legal advisor, a transaction advisor, an asset valuation advisor, and an expression of interest for these bids will be put out, and let us see how the process unfolds. But as of now, decision in principle of the Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs is what we are basing our work on.
But Mr. Sinha, the panel says that Air India, and I'm just being the devil's advocate, we at ET Now do support the fact that Air India should be sold. But I think the panel, at least reports seem to suggest here, say that Air India is in the middle of a restructuring plan, and given the minor improvements in operating performance, why doesn't the government wait up until 2022? I'm just being the devil's advocate when I put forward that question. How about waiting till 2022 when the deadline for that restructuring plan ends?
Well, there are many views on this matter, but the Niti Aayog and the Honorable Finance Minister have been very clear in this regard that it is the responsibility of the government to invest taxpayer funds, taxpayer resources into those areas where we can get the highest social impact and the highest social return. That, of course, can be achieved from areas such as health, sanitation, education, vital infrastructure, defense. There are all these different sectors where I think we can achieve higher social return and higher social impact than investing that money in Air India. The airline industry in India is a mature, competitive, very well-regulated industry. We now have the third largest domestic aviation market in the world, and 86% of that market is served by private sector airlines. And all of our airline companies collectively are doing a terrific job of providing airline services at very low fares, among the lowest fares in the world, in fact, while rapidly extending connectivity across all of India. So, given all of those factors, Air India does not remain a strategic priority or a strategic company any longer for the government of India, and this has been clearly articulated by the recommendation from the Niti Aayog, and the Honorable Finance Minister has clarified this matter on multiple occasions, including on the floor of Parliament just very recently when we were all in Parliament in the last session.
In that case, what's taking this process so long, Mr. Sinha? It was on the 28th of June that the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approved the sale of Air India. Are you worried about the political noise and fallout? Is the government now going slow on the entire process? Why is it taking so long for us to make headway on the sale of Air India?
We have to conduct the process in in a very deliberate, methodical and transparent manner. And PPAM has put together a very rigorous process under very careful oversight of a variety of senior officials as well as the alternative mechanism. And because we want to do it in such a manner that is scrupulously fair, honest and transparent, we obviously are moving on it in a methodical way, and that does take time. We expect in the next 6 to 8 months to get to the bids and a winning bidder, and then thereafter it will take another few months to be able to actually close the transaction and get through all of the legal approvals.
All right, so we do hope the necessary approvals come in time, but I'm going to talk about the possible things that experts have been speaking about, and I'm sure we'll discuss that with our expert panel right here after we finish speaking to you. One of the things that experts all across the board say and insist upon is that there should be a complete exit which makes sense, because any remnant of a government stake there deters investors. Do you agree with that view?
That is for the alternative mechanism, which is chaired by the Honorable Finance Minister to decide.
Okay, I'm not going to get an answer out of whether it will be a lock, stock, barrel sale or whether this is going to be done in parts. But let me also put out something else that the experts say, and they do insist that the government must absorb the working capital debt to the tune of about 30,000 crore rupees, because without doing that, it will be very difficult to really attract big ticket investors. There will be very low real interest left there. Do you at least agree with this?
We have to make sure that what we provide for bidders to consider is a viable, sustainable airline. And exactly what debt will be absorbed through the SPV and what debt will be provided along with the operating entities that will be put up for bid is something that the alternative mechanism will take a final decision on under the advice of the transaction advisor. That process is underway right now.
Okay, quick last word, Mr. Sinha, then what does the government plan to do with the non-core assets of Air India? What we are picking up is that the core assets is what will be sold and the non-core assets are likely to be absorbed in an SPV along with the working capital debt. Is that the direction in which the government is moving? What's the plan on non-core assets?
There is an SPV that is being created, and that SPV will house the non-core assets and monetize them as quickly and as effectively as possible. Those non-core assets will therefore be used to pay down whatever debt that will be absorbed by the SPV. So that's essentially the way this structure is going to work. On the one hand, we will have the SPV with the non-core assets, the unsustainable debt that we will transfer to the non-core assets in the SPV. And then on the other hand, we will have the operating airline and the various subsidiaries that will be items that can be considered for bidding for various airlines that may be interested, as well as other entities that might be interested in these various entities.
Sinha for joining us on the phone line from Hazaribagh with the perspective. That's the first government reaction to the draft report of the Parliamentary Committee on the Air India sale. The first reaction from the government exclusively on ET Now. But let's take it forward with our stellar panel that's joining us to debate the Air India privatization. We've got a star-studded panel. Syed Zafar Islam, Independent Director, Air India, and a spokesperson for the BJP. Tom Vadakkan, spokesperson of the Congress. Sunit Chopra of CPIM. Jitendra Bhargav, former ED, Air India, and Kapil Kaul, CEO and Director of CAPA South Asia, and a very known aviation expert. Kapil Kaul, I'm going to start off with you. The big question, you heard some part of that interview with the aviation minister. Can we afford to give another 5 years for Air India to turn around?
Frankly, that when I read 5 year, that the government is going to continue ownership for next 5 years, that surprised me. Even though there's a draft report, but I don't want this opinion to get built that we could continue government ownership for next 5 years. Next 5 years means another $2.5–3 billion of further funding. We've already spent 24,000 crores. So I don't know whether we need to invest this money in social sector and build infrastructure in health and education and reprioritize our goals, which is what the government is doing. moving away from that goal and possibly saying that the government will continue ownership is a self-defeating purpose, to be honest with you. We have continued to believe that you cannot have private capital fight taxpayers' money. It's no longer relevant anymore. We must reprioritize. You need Air India, you need a private, efficient and sustainable Air India, and that cannot be in government hands. So, and I'm hoping that the final recommendation of the parliamentary committee actually takes a right decision, which would be to privatize Air India. So I hope that the decision to continue government ownership for next 5 years is not an opinion that gets built up, because these opinions get built up fast and it creates attraction, and there are other political sensitivities with respect to such a large transaction. Then we potentially might see this Air India's privatization not taking off as it happened in the NDA one, in spite of the government's best intention that time. So we must support all Indians, all taxpayers.
True.
Must support this time, decisively support the government in terms of ensuring that Air India gets privatized.
Right. Kapil, just hold your thoughts there. I think you've really put the nail on its head that this should not deter the government. The government's best intentions are to sell Air India. We at ET Now believe it's perhaps the right thing to do. Why put good money behind bad? But I'll take a quick question from Sunit Chopra before I take it across to the others on the panel. Mr. Chopra, Kapil Kaul outlines there why the 5-year wait is dangerous. But what's your view? Can we afford to give Air India another 5 years for a turnaround? Or do you believe this is an exercise in futility because it has had so much time to turn around all this while? Do you realistically believe we can afford to give another 5 years to the Maharaja?
You see, when we look at the loss-making carrier, we know that they have a debt of 48,871.86 crores. This is something that is a problem. Yes, I understand that. But the point is that it's an investment of a strategic importance, one. Secondly, you have a number of employees to pay whose arrears you'll have to deal with afterwards. I think the way they're rushing through this is because of the fiscal problem. Already you're more or less, on the verge of your fiscal limits. And we have to understand that the government has a responsibility to the people. There is a belief that the government should not be in goods and services. Why not? There are many states who are doing very well, giving the people enough goods and services. So I think if in 5 years you can manage a turnaround, you should do that. It's a very important firm that has to be kept going. If people have made a mess of it before, let there be an inquiry and find out where the mess is.
Go to Syed Zafar Islam, very quick, and Jitendra Bhargav as well. Tom Badakan, what has changed between 2007 and now? Why give more time? Why put more good money chasing bad money? Sunit Chopra spoke about fiscal limits, and the question that I'm tempted to ask is: should the government spend its scarce resources in in education, in social infrastructure, in healthcare, or should it put this money, taxpayer money, in running a loss-making air carrier?
The issue is not about the sale of Air India. The issue is the management of the economy by this government. This is a whole bunch of people who have mismanaged the economy, and it's going down the tube. There are very positive signals being given on your channel. I just saw an interview. But point is, they are suspect. We know it very clearly. When the panel is discussing about 5 years, they want to give it a chance. There's a whole lot of people who are going to be unemployed. Employment is one scene which only promises have been seen, no delivery. If jobs are to be lost at this scale, and when we talk about management, this should be the Air India should be treated like a PSU without civil aviation interference. What is happening here is mismanagement at the top level, and then basically the money that is shown as as loss making has been spent. 25% of that money has been spent in buying aircrafts. There is a move, there is operational gains being made. At this juncture, when there is a view that they might turn around, why not give it a chance? This is the silver we are selling. We talk about, the government of India talks about patriotism, nationalism. Where is it that all gone? You need to manage it. You have good managers. Give it a PSU structure and see how it turns around. Give them 5 years. But you're worried because you have mismanaged the economy. And I heard the MOS, Civil Aviation, quoting the finance minister as if he had no views on the matter. Everything depended on what Mr. Arun Jaitley thought, viewed, and his worldview. The point is, the civil aviation minister must have a view, and he must come out with factual ways of finding a solution instead of selling out. This is purely a sellout. I'm sorry, many may not agree with my view on this issue, but I feel strongly that you can do a turnaround. We had a package and we would have done it also. I'm
not so sure about that, Mr. Varakan. And while on most days I agree with you, I'm not so sure here whether you could have actually turned around Air India. It hasn't happened since August of 2007. I wonder what's going to change now. But I will let Zafar Islam come in. He's not just the BJP spokesperson. He also sits on the board of Air India to take on some of the points that you made. The point about let 5 years lapse, let there be a turnaround. Are we doing this only for fiscal concerns and all of that? Zafar Islam, it's all yours.
Respond to both of the political spokesperson have spoken from Congress as well as CPI. See, the intent of the government is very, very clear. And I think they need to understand that government has to do business what the government needs to do the business. It is not that the government has to be there in every sector. And it was the decision of the cabinet that this government to disinvest Air India purely because of several reasons. One, that it's a loss-making enterprise. It is incurring regular loss. Secondly, the taxpayer monies cannot be put here time and again, because it is not something which is a strategic nature. This business is a service industry which can be run by private airlines, which can be run by private entrepreneur, and government need not be necessarily running this because there's no strategic importance of airlines brings to the table or for the people as a whole. Secondly, what is more important, that the concern which has been expressed by CPI spokesperson as well as Congress spokesperson about losing a job. Where is the question of losing a job? That this concern has already been addressed by the Minister of Civil Aviation on the floor of the Parliament, that none of the employees are going to lose job. Third thing, that the performance of Air India has definitely improved. That the focus of the management, the incumbent management, is definitely to improve the performance. As a going concern, every management team has to put in sincere effort to improve the performance. But having said, there is a outstanding, a huge loss sitting on balance sheet, and that is something which makes you bleed every day. And who will pump in those kind of money?
Okay, fair enough.
It has to be that there has to be some decision one government has to take to ensure that every day taxpayers' monies are not put.
All right, fair enough.
Which can be otherwise put in some other places, which can give you better multiple in terms of GDP and improve the life of
we spoke about that side, Zafar Islam. Sure. Let me get a word from my other panelists as well. You made strong opening points on why the government is moving ahead, and I have a question on why the government is not moving ahead as briskly as it should. We'll come to that in a bit. But Jitendra Bhargav, opening comment from you, because this leaked draft report of the parliamentary panel believes that equity infusion on Air India has been done only in a piecemeal basis. About 26,000 crores has been infused over the last few years, much of it by the UPA government. Tom Varakan spoke about it as well. If that's not enough, then what is? How much more equity infusion needs to happen for us to realize that this is a carrier that needs to be sold?
You see, it is nobody's case that the government has handled Air India in a right manner. Several kind of decisions have cost Air India dearly. But to recommend that the Air India's privatization should be delayed by 5 years will be suicidal. Adding to what Mr. Kapil Kaul said, the financial burden on the government, I have a different perspective. In the next 5 years, Air India will get further marginalized. if it was commanding 17% market share 4 years ago, in 5 years' time, it may be under 10%. Will it be an attractive proposition for any potential buyer at that stage? The answer is no. Coming to Mr. Zafar Iqbal's thing, yes, there is a need and a better assurance needs to be given to the employees, the serving and the retired employees, and I'm one of them for that matter, that their jobs will be secure, their retirement benefits will be secure, and you will have them winning over them. But what has happened is that barring the stray instances of assurance given, there has not been any kind of a meeting, etc., where you say, okay, Air India employees' concerns will be taken care of, and you'll suddenly find Air India employees also supporting, because a lot of right people, right-thinking Air Indians do believe that if Air India is to survive and be revived, there have to be major changes, including government ownership, board structuring, everything needs to be changed. The new work culture has to be brought in. You cannot have a bureaucrat helming the airline repeatedly for short tenures and then expect Air India to come about. And one last point. People have been saying that Air India has made good kind of improvement in the last few years. Please, let's do a fair analysis, an impartial one, not get carried away by incumbent chairmen who, to justify their own performance, have been saying that Air India is on the mend. The fact is, both on the count of occupancy factor and on-time performance, Air India continues to be ranked last amongst all airlines. And no systemic changes have been brought about in the last 5 years of this critical phase of Air India's future.
All right. Mr. Bhargav, you've made a spirited point there in his opening remarks, but I'll take it to Kapil call. And Kapil, you know, the panel accepts that airlines' debt was due to the misdirected policies or the policy direction of the government. And I find it ironical that at the same time, while it acknowledges inefficiency and incompetence, it still wants government control to continue. Don't you find it ironical as well?
You know, Supriya, first of all, I don't know where is the policy on Air India. I have not seen a policy in Air India. The policy of Air India for the last 10, 15, 10, 12 years is to give doles and give taxpayers money out. The easiest thing that happens in the previous regime, and I hope that this gets arrested soon, is that the easiest thing is to keep giving taxpayers money out. I find this bizarre that in a country like India, where there are scarce resources, we need to invest in education and health, and we are still talking about bailing Air India for 5 years. So first of all, there's no policy on Air India. I haven't seen a stated policy in Air India. Even the NCAP didn't talk about a stated policy in Air India. There is some bit of fear that if you talk about Air India's divestment and privatization, there's some upheaval is going to happen. I don't understand why we are not very, very direct and upfront about this. As for job losses are concerned, India is a growing sector. It will be a 1 billion market in about 3 to 4 decades. We will always have jobs for everyone if we have a vibrant sector. Interim, there might be some losses, job losses at the contractual level which can be protected. But we need to look at the larger scheme of things. We need Air India. Air India cannot be dispensed with, but we need a strong Air India. We need a vibrant India which is not dependent on taxpayers' money. But my only point is that we don't have a policy on Air India. Neither the previous regime nor this regime has come out with a direct policy in Air India. You must have a policy that the government taxpayer can't afford Air India.
Sure.
And let a private sector company run it and run it profitably, obviously under conditions which maximizes the value for Air India, which tries as much as possible to protect the employees' interest. But we must look at it from a national perspective. I don't agree that there is a policy in Air India.
Fair enough.
We are scared of talking about Air India's privatization. I don't know why.
Exactly. And that's the point. In fact, again, you know, I want to debunk some of the points made in this draft report which has been leaked before we talk about the road ahead on Air India's sale. And again, one point made which sort of worries me deeply is that the panel argues that if Air India is not owned by government, then private carriers would hurt the interest of consumers. Mr. Sunit Chopra, isn't it time to bury this mistrust of private enterprise? I mean, look at sectors like telecom, for instance. Tariffs came crashing down to the levels that they are, not because BSNL and MTNL cut tariffs, but because private players brought the tariffs down. So why is there so much of mistrust of private enterprise? Sunit Chopra.
It's not a mistrust of private enterprise. Look at what private enterprise has done to the railways. You have had private contract labor coming in, and your accidents have increased you know, in geometrical proportions. So you can't, you know, have a mess. And our experience is from the non-performing assets that Indian industry and is something that is not very brilliant. The large amounts of non-performing assets show you that they do not know how to run businesses.
You know, I somehow don't understand that mistrust, but I think given the left ideology, I will grant you the fact that you will continue to harbor that mistrust. But to the Congress party and Mr. Varakan, you know, you alluded to nationalist, you know, national carrier. Even this report talks about a national carrier. This report talks about national pride. I believe that this is an erroneously misplaced notion. This is a business enterprise, and this report also goes on to say you should not see Air India as a business enterprise, as a business entity. If you're not going to see an aviation company which operates in a cutthroat competitive environment, which is steadily losing market share, how else will you see it? And you know, we at ET now believe that Air India is where it is today because it has not been treated as a corporate entity. So my question really is, don't you believe that this national carrier, national pride, all of these are erroneously misplaced things? It's time Air India is seen through the lens of a corporate entity.
Well, it can be a corporate entity if the Civil Aviation Ministry is kept out of it. It is run as a PSU, profit-making PSU. Every time you interfere with the policies of a profit-making organization, you're going to have the same music. But let me tell you something, that is a social commitment. When you want Air India for evacuation in times of calamity, tell me how much of your private sector would be interested in it. You try telling them that to divert their flights from, they won't help you. It is Air India who stood at that time for evacuation purposes from India abroad. So let us not run into a conclusion. Corporates are there, they have a social commitment. But here is the government of India should interfere less in the policies to ensure that it is run as a corporate. There are PSUs which are making profit. Give them a chance. 5 years is not a lifetime, it's a lifetime of a government perhaps. But why this blessed hurry? I mean, if you are messed up with the economy, what are the chances of you messing it up further? While you want to sell off silver, pointers, give it a chance. When there is an evacuation in certain earthquake region, has happened in Nepal, various other countries. When you talk about erroneous conception, there is a social commitment. Profit is not an end all. There are educational institutions running and at this rate, you close down half of India. Point is, we are interested in profits. It has to be run meticulously under corporate supervision, but give it a chance. This
Fair
is
enough.
like a
Can I just
surgical
come in,
operation.
You
need to give it a
Zafar
chance.
Islam, quick.
You put it in the ICU, give it a
You made your point, Tom Varakan. Zafar Islam, quick rebuttal from you, and then I'm coming to both Jitendra Bhargav and Kapil Kaul. But Zafar Islam, a quick rebuttal from you.
First of all, the argument which Mr. Varakan is making everyone laugh. Probably it will make everyone laugh because he is recommending that today it should be kept away from the outside the purview of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. When they had been in the government for 10 years, they didn't do. And today, the Air India is in a situation what it is purely because of the policies they had adopted and the mismanagement of the UPA government. And we are actually cleansing the system, and the Air India, it's something which has been given to us. And now we are trying to find out a solution which works best for Air India, its employees, and for a country as a whole. Secondly, what is more important, repeatedly is talking about economy. I think he should go back and see that the economy, in what condition and situation they had left in 2014. Today, the economy is in a very sound condition, and it is growing. And if you see the PMI number of January, if you see December, if you see the other numbers of moving average numbers of IIP number of October, and you see that.
Right, Zafar Islam, let's not make this about the state of the economy. Zafar Islam, I'm going to interrupt you. Let's not make this about the state of the economy. We've had that debate. Okay, we've had the debate. Zafar Islam, I take your point.
But what is more important? What is more important as far as Air India is concerned? Air India is in a situation where it needed to be privatized. That is the best option for as far as Air India's interest is concerned. But
point taken.
the concern which has been expressed, I think the government of India and the empowered committee will take all the concern which will be expressed by the parliamentary committee, and the views will be formed and that will be communicated. But
Zafar Islam, I'm going to have to interrupt you. I need a word in from my other panelists. Zafar Islam, I'm going to have to interrupt you. I need to get a quick word from Jitendra Bhargav, because Tom Badakan spoke about government interference in Air India. I'm sure if I let Mr. Bhargav speak, he can go on for the next 45 minutes on the extent of intervention that happened when he was in Air India. But I'm not going to give you that opportunity, Mr. Bhargav, not tonight for sure. But a question on operational performance, because that's something that is sort of that's spoken about, and even this panel says that there's been an improvement in the operational performance of Air India. Operating profit has improved from 250 crores in FY15 to an estimated 530 crores in FY18. How much of this is on account of the crude windfall? You know, crude prices make up for almost 40% of the operating cost of a carrier. How much of this is on account of crude windfall, or how much of it is because of operational efficiency that seems to have come into the carrier? Your take.
I cannot but make 2 points prior to replying to your query. One, to Mr. Tom Badakan. It was the Congress government in the late 80s which first referred Air India to the Disinvestment Commission of India. Let's not forget. Number two, it's not the government structure per se that matters, because even when Air India was at its glorious heights, it was a government company under J.R.D. Tata's chairmanship with no government interference. Now, coming to the actual issue of Air India's claim of improved performance, let's put it this way. If Air India was really to survive and be revived, Air India should not have allowed itself to be marginalized month after month in terms of market share. In terms of performance, whether it's on-time performance or it is the occupancy factor, on two key parameters on which no external forces play a part, they have not been able to succeed. They continue to be ranked last amongst it. Why is it so? Because there are genuine systemic weaknesses in the way Air India is managed, Air India is governed, the kind of work practices that Air India has. Do we have the wherewithal? Do we have the might to change the work practices? The answer is no. The unions are strong enough to still stonewall all those kind of things. So the reason what we need to do is a total overhaul, which can only be brought about if Air India is privatized without a % of a stake being held by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Unless that is done, we'll only see further marginalization. I take the point that Air India has provided human service, has evacuated people. But can that be enough reason for keeping Air India under government control and continue to be infused with the public funds? The answer is no. There has to be an alternative that needs to be found out. Now, the parliamentary panel has also spoken about employees protection, etc., which I think government will need to do it. The other point is, what is best in Air India's interest as far as the future is concerned? Parliamentary committee need to question this, to be asking this, and in my opinion, Ministry of Civil Aviation should take the initiative of calling the members of the parliament comprising the parliamentary committee, show them effectively with the performance data of the last 5 years and say, look, with this kind of performance data that you have, you cannot aspire or have hope for the next 5 years that Air India can do something commendably well, that one would say, oh, it does not need to be privatized. The faster it is done, the better, because the later you do, it gets marginalized further.
All right.
So we have a lot of reasons for it.
Right.
There will be questions asked on the Air India.
Yes,
Air India has an emotional connect with people, but government needs to communicate effectively, put in public domain.
Yes, Mr. Bhargav, I get your larger point, but that's the point I want to take forward with Kapil Kaul. I get your larger point, but that's exactly the point I want to take forward with Kapil Kaul. And, you know, we at ET Now believe that's the only way possible. Air India has to be sold. You cannot keep pumping in taxpayers' money to keep an airline afloat, because the government really has no business to be in the aviation business. Kapil Kaul, let's address the possible ways. Let's look at the future and let's see the best possible outcomes of a Air India sale. The point that Mr. Bhargav alluded to, and I want you to talk about more in detail, is this has to be a lock, stock, barrel sale. The government has to completely exit because any retention of a stake in Air India will only deter investors. Do you agree with us?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have recommended, you must have seen our must-dos for Air India. Air India's privatization, government must not keep any residual stake. There must be 100% divestment. There's no two questions about it. I don't want to get into this debate whether Air India has performed better or not performed better. I just want to put few points to you and to the panel as well as to the people who are seeing this program. We have spent 24,000 crore rupees in Air India. What could we have as a country done for that 24,000 crores? How much of investment we would have made in education, social infrastructure, in health, and other critical areas that the government has? If we today don't get out of Air India, we will spend under $2 to $3 billion, maybe more. My estimates of $2.5–3 billion may be conservative. What could we do with that money when the country has scarce resources? Thirdly, very important, if Air India is national, it doesn't mean Indigo, Jet Airways and Spice and other carriers are international. It is a continuing infatuation with socialism that we feel that Air India is national. Jet is as international. It has made India proud. Indigo, Spice, all of these carriers have done a wonderful job, better job than perhaps at Air India. And you cannot run a national carrier where we have spent 24,000. We're going to take another massive haircut just because we will have emergencies and we need a carrier just because there is an emergency in few times a year. Government can pay and requisition services of private airlines and pay them if that's the case. In Nepal and in Srinagar, I see Indigo and other carriers had done free flights. So it's a myth to say that because we have emergencies, we should keep Air India. Just because we have jobs to protect, we must keep Air India. I can't imagine that argument can hold good and be relevant in our times. This is not a debate about Air India has made a 500 crore profit or 1,000 crore profit. It is what have you done? We have wasted 24,000 crores. Are we going to waste another 15–20,000 crores? And the collective wisdom of this panel and the decision makers must be, what would that 40,000 crores would have done for India, what we have spent or what we are going to spend? So I think we need to reprioritize, and to be honest with you, it's not a debate about Congress or BJP. The government has taken a right decision. The airline sector is vibrant in the private hands. You must do a considerate sale. You must ensure that the government maximizes its value. But we must decisively end this once for all, this debate about whether we must have a government ownership or a private ownership. There is no case for a government ownership in Air India going forward. And earlier we realized that it's better for India.
Let me get a quick word from Tom Vadakan before I take it to Syed Zafar Islam, and I want to talk about the contours of the sale very briefly. But you know, Tom Vadakan, only fair that you respond, because I think Kapil Kaul has very crisply articulated the compelling reason and apolitical reason. You know, let's not make this a political debate. Without politicizing it, he's crisply articulated the compelling need for this privatization of Air India to happen. How would you respond to the specific points made by Kapil Kaul there?
See, Kapil Kaul and his mandate, I really don't know. But tomorrow I will not come on your channel to discuss the taking over of the Indian Railways, which should be next on the agenda. Point is, there is a social commitment. There is a social commitment. India is not US yet. We can put in management in place. We can do it. We have the people. We have the technology to go ahead. But the fact that you want to be cynical, that you can't do it, I think India is competent. When you say that we have competent managers, we have brilliant people who can take over, but the point is they must be operative. They must be permitted to do so. If Mr. Kapil Kaul feels that the end all is selling off all your silver, so be it, but think of India not as that. We have not reached the US state of levels, but point is we need a social commitment to the people of India, which may be a laughing matter for you, Mr. Kapil, but remember, this country is not just the class that you talk about. This country belongs to the people of India, and the last man in the ladder is to be addressed. It is not the social values you believe in.
I must get half a minute to intervene.
Sure, I will let you. Okay, Mr. Vadakan, I get your larger point, but I think it's only fair that politicians attack each other, but I think Kapil Kaul has a quick defense there. I'll let Kapil speak before I take it across to Zafar Islam. Kapil, go ahead.
No, I personally feel baffled by this statement, what my mandate is, frankly. I think we have made no case for any particular company. Our mandate is to save India and India's taxpayers' money. We don't have any mandate apart from that. That's number one. Secondly, just saying that it's a, Mr. Vadakan's, frankly, I don't want to get into an argument with him. I have been in a couple of television debates with him before, but I don't think his argument will hold any good. It's a, you may say that what mandate you have and social cause. There is no better social cause than saving this money in putting it and reprioritizing it where it is required. Air India can be run by efficient people which will have a mandate to run it in a manner that they should. We should use this money, that's my only mandate, that use this money and use it where it's required. Don't waste this money. Private sector and efficient private sector can help you give economic benefits, develop further connectivity, build trade and tourism, and build a glorious Air India. We have wasted 24,000 crores. We shouldn't waste another time. That's my mandate.
Kapil, I get your anguish and I get your point. But I think anybody who's a taxpayer in this country and that taxpayer's money is going to be put behind Air India, I think is a stakeholder. But I'll take a question to Zafar Islam. And Zafar Islam, by the virtue of being on the board and also being a spokesperson of the ruling benches, what should the government be doing with the colossal debt that Air India's books boast of or not boast of? Isn't it a given that you have to absorb the working capital debt to the tune of about 30,000 crore rupees before any reasonable buyer shows, good interest in the airline? To get a good buyer, the government has to absorb that working capital debt, without which, you're going to be sitting on that colossal debt and you will find very few takers, maybe piecemeal buyers here and there.
Well, Supriya, I will not comment on the structure and how much the government is going to absorb, whether it's really government is going to absorb, and how the entire dynamics will work, because this is still on the table. It is still being discussed, and the transaction manager have been engaged, and they will make a suggestion, recommendation to the empowered committee, and the empowered committee will take a collective decision what should be the right approach and what should be the right structure, and how the entire debt, outstanding debt on the book will be dealt with. So at this point in time, I will refrain making any comment, even though I myself as an investment banker and do understand the dynamics, how the entire thing will pan out. But I will refrain from making any such comment on the structure of the transaction and the government, how the government will deal with the outstanding on the book. But all I can say that, as Kapil was rightly making that statement, that the government's objective to privatize it, and when they privatize it, they must get the maximum value for Air India. That's something the objective is that needed to be achieved by engaging a transaction banker and by putting together a structure which gets the maximum value for the disinvestment of Air India. Secondly, what is more important, I just want to touch base the observation made by the earlier Air India employee, Mr. Bhargava. He had made certain statement, but I must tell him that he is now no more sitting in Air India, and his view is may be right, may not be right, but you must compliment your colleague in Air India that they are doing an exceptional job. They're improving the performance. They're definitely the lot of improvement is Air India has achieved in last few months and last few years. And I think you need to be complimentary rather than making a statement which is contrary to the performance which has been demonstrated and exhibited by the Air India team.
Sure, fair enough. I think the intent as an analyst, and he's here not in his capacity as an aviation analyst, and he's making a point. I'm coming to Jitendra Bhargava. I'm coming to you and I have a question for you specifically.
I can revert
okay, fair enough.
Made, but I'm not going to specific.
Sure, okay, fair enough. Jitendra Bhargava, I'm coming to you only, but I have a question for you as well, and you can give your counter to that. But a specific question, which is, I think the crux of this debate is what happens to the employees of Air India. 14,006 employees. This is half of the strength that was there 10 years ago, so which means considerable effort has happened in cutting the employee strength. But look at Indigo, that commands nearly 40% market share, has about 15,000 employees, if I'm not wrong. How does one look at Air India's staff strength versus efficiency? The aviation minister has gone on Parliament and said that Air India sale will not lead to any job loss. How feasible is that going to be, and what will a private party do with this 14,006 employees, you think?
See, let me say, I had said it in the program earlier, Air India's performance has improved marginally, but not commensurate with the kind of improvement that has been shown by the other private airlines. Very clear on this, and I cited 2 instances of on-time performance and occupancy factor, both this thing. There has been a statement made regarding the debt and the kind of losses that Air India has, which is, in my opinion, is being overstated, for the simple reason that Air India has built a huge kind of assets over a period of time. That is why, if you notice that I have, while articulating for privatization, been emphasizing one simple factor, that if you delay the privatization of Air India, it will only get further marginalized. Government taxpayers' money that's been put, it has been used fairly well, I would say, and that is why the assets of Air India have been done. It's only in the past few years, thanks to the government's various decisions that have been taken, that has cost the Air India dearly. Now, coming to your specific questions on the employees. Yes, employees have a very genuine concern. Air India's jobs are non-pensionable jobs. Their medical and what the free tickets that they get need to be taken care of, because that is the way the life has been planned, and there are employees. If there is reduction in the number of manpower, let us also not overlook the fact that a lot of services of Air India's, because there is no recruitment being done, have been contracted out. So that is why this 14,000 figure looks very good, and my earnest plea to the government through Mr. Zafar Iqbal, who is a member on the board, is to look at an impassioned kind of analysis of Air India's performance. Look at the systemic weaknesses that is dragging Air India down. I am also a well-wisher of Air India, and so there is a need to be very systemic, to be very open about it. There is no kind of need to play hide and seek. If somebody has done it, let's look at it. How many CMDs have we got in the last 3 years?
Absolutely.
Why are these changes being done? Let's give somebody a clear kind of dictate. You have Air India's tenure at the helm.
Mr. Bhargav, I get your point there, but I'll have to ask you to...
We have been hearing of Air India's turnaround for these last so many years.
All right, I get your point there, and I think it's time we stop having this kid glove approach to Air India and not keep talking about its employees. But Mrs. Chopra, what will be the political fallout of the Air India sale? That's a question that is gathering momentum in New Delhi. You know, this parliamentary panel report has sparked some concerns, but what do you believe will be the political fallout of the Air India sale?
It will be yet another thing that people will profit from and close down in the end. You know, the famous business that was started by one of our BJP leaders' sons. In a year, they went to a turnover that was 16,000 above, and then the next year the company failed. I mean, what is this? Indian businessmen, by and large, do not run companies in the way companies should be run to have a long-term impact on society. Your public sector is far better on that by any figures.
Tom Badakan, a quick closing comment from you on the political fallout. And the reason we are surprised is the Congress has sort of championed sort of pro-reform, progressive economic policies. And one would have expected that the Congress party, having seen, having realized how difficult it was to turn around in Air India, the 10 years it was in office, would support a move like this, which is why we're upset. I don't expect the left parties to come out and support a move to privatize Air India. But the Congress is far more reform-oriented party, which is why, will you continue to block this this Air India sale even in Parliament? Will the Congress continue with its opposition, or will the Congress give it a review its position, look at it in a more objective manner?
See, let me be very candid. It is the Congress that brought in reforms. We have, now for example, the way we bought this whole concept of Aadhaar, and to what level it has reached, you know it. The Supreme Court is the issue of Aadhaar, GST, how it's being mishandled, and that is our worry. You see, basically you have a whole bunch of people who have taken these issues to a different level. You need to address it. Without addressing it, we are worried on the kind of people who are, the doctors who are managing. Half of them are quacks, and that is worrying us more seriously, because instead of employment generation, these people are going to lose jobs, and we have a situation coming. We will support reforms, yes we will, but reforms with a human face, that's the position we have taken. And here we only plead that yes, Give the panel, a parliamentary panel, a chance. Hear them out. Wait till the final report comes in before jumping to any conclusion.
Okay, Mr. Maharaja, can I get your point there? A quick closing comment then, and I've got just 30 seconds for this Zafar Islam. I'm going to throw this one at you. June 28th, if my memory doesn't fail me, is when the cabinet gave its clearance for Air India stake sale. What is taking you so long? Is the government developing cold feet at all?
Not at all. In fact, if you see that this government is dealing with all the inefficiencies which the previous government has left for us to deal with. And the Tom Vadakkan is talking about the good work they have done. Actually, they have used all the good PSUs as cash cow for them and to plunder these cash cows for their own benefits. And that's why there are certain public sectors, certain other companies are in bad shape purely because of the inefficiency they have built in. They have misused for their own personal gains. As far as Air India is concerned, the government is absolutely clear, and the decision has been made. Now the Parliament Committee, which panel, whatever the recommendation they will have, their views will be discussed certainly by the empowered committee, and they will form a view and they will take this forward. But as far as government's intent is there, they are absolutely clear that we need to privatize it because it is incurring loss, and the loss is because of a huge debt outstanding on the book of on the balance sheet of Air India. Secondly, what I want to tell Mr. Bhargava, and I'm sure because he is an ex
No.
Zafar, I'm completely at time.
Okay, for the benefit of everyone. The benefit.
Okay.
That the Air India is a full carrier airlines, and the market share, what he is talking about, is the domestic market. Of course, the Air India share has come off, but if you see the international market, the performance has gone up, and the realization on international route has definitely gone up. So they are focused. They have limited number of aircraft. They have to do work locally.
All right.
Okay.
Zafar Islam, I'm sorry.
Point taken. You're saying that the performance has been good. Zafar Islam, I'm sorry, I'm completely timed out. This has been a fascinating discussion. Frankly, we couldn't have had such a diverse range of opinion on an issue of such strategic national importance as Air India. Says Zafar Islam, Kapil Kaul, Mr. Bhargav, Tom Vadakkan, Suri Chopra. Thank you so much for taking time out and joining in with that perspective. Air India sale should not happen tomorrow. It should have happened yesterday. That's the compelling need for the sale of the national carrier, because frankly the amount of taxpayer money that's been pumped into this carrier could have easily been invested in social sector programs, and that's the compelling reason why the government should have moved ahead with the sale of Air India.
But I think all eyes are now on the Modi government, on whether they will have the gumption and the wherewithal to go ahead with this mega reform. If GST was the mother of all tax reforms, Air India is perhaps very, very crucial to send out the signal that the government has the wherewithal and the appetite for big ticket reform. So all eyes set on New Delhi, the Aviation Ministry and the parliamentary panel. There's a final report that will be out, but of course on the Modi government on whether they will go ahead and bite the bullet. Completely timed out on this edition of the India Development Debate. Up next is Top 10 at 10 with Ruchi Bhatia.